गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, entitled Divinity and Divine Service, text number 15. Yad anudhyasina yukta. It's there. Yad anudhyasina yukta karma granthi nibandhanam Chindanti ko vidastasya ko na kuryat kataratim yad anudhyasina yuktaha karma granthi nibandhanam Chindanti ko vidastasya ko na kuryat kataratim Yad anudhyasina yuktaha karma granthi nibandhanam Chindanti ko vidastasya ko na kuryat kataratim
Yad anudyasina yukta karma granthi nibandhanam Chindanti govidastasya ko na kuryat kataratim
Yad anudyasina yukta karma granthi nibandhanam Chindanti ko vidastasya ko na kuryat kataratim
को न कुर्यात् तदा रतिम्
यदनुध्यासिना युक्तः
यदनुध्यासिना युक्तः
कर्मग्रन्थि
कर्मग्रन्थि निबन्धनम्
चिन्तन्ति गोविदास्तस्य
चिन्तन्ति गोविदास्तस्य
को न कुर्यात् तथारतिम्
को न कुर्यात् तदा रतिम्.
Okay, word to word meaning. Yat,
Yet
which.
which
Anudhya,
Anudhya
remembrance.
remembrance.
Asina,
Sina
sword.
sword.
Yuktaha,
Taha
being equipped with.
being equipped with.
Karma,
Karma
reactionary work.
reactionary work.
Granthi,
Granthi
knot.
not.
Nibandhanam,
Bandhanam
internet.
internet.
Chindanti,
Chindanti
cut.
cut.
Kovida,
Kovida
intelligent.
intelligent.
Tasya,
Tasya
his.
is
Kah, who.
who
Na,
na
not.
not.
Kuryat,
Kriya
shall do.
shall do.
Katha,
Tata
messages.
messages.
Ratim,
Ratim
attention.
attention.
Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work karma by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? Purport. The contact of the spiritual spark with material elements creates a knot which must be cut if one wants to be liberated from the actions and reactions of fruitive work. Liberation means freedom from the cycle of reactionary work. This liberation automatically follows for one who constantly remembers the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead. This is because all the activities of the Supreme Lord, His Leela, are transcendental to the modes of the material energy. They are all attractive spiritual activities, and therefore, constant association with the spiritual activities of the Supreme Lord gradually spiritualizes the conditioned soul and ultimately severs the knot of material bondage. Liberation from material bondage is therefore a byproduct of devotional service. Attainment of spiritual knowledge is not sufficient to ensure liberation. Such knowledge must be overcoated with devotional service so that ultimately the devotional service alone predominates. Then liberation is made possible. Even the reactionary work of the fruitive workers can lead one to liberation when it is overcoated with devotional service. Karma overcoated with devotional service is called karma yoga. Similarly, empirical knowledge overcoated with devotional service is called jnana yoga. But pure bhakti yoga is independent of such karma and jnana because it alone can not only endow one with liberation from conditional life but also award one the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, any sensible man who is above the average man with a poor fund of knowledge must constantly remember the personality of Godhead by hearing about Him, by glorifying Him, by remembering Him, and by worshipping Him always without cessation. That is the perfect way of devotional service. The Goswamis of Vrindavan, who were authorized by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to preach the Bhakti cult, rigidly followed this rule and made immense literatures of transcendental science for our benefit. They have chalked out ways for all classes of men in terms of the different castes and orders of life in pursuance of the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and similar other authoritative scriptures. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरत्वसे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So here we find Sutta Goswami speaking to the sages of Naimisharanya, and he is describing the prime duties of all human beings by which everyone can be benefited. So the 13th verse he said, Ata pumbi dvijashreshta vannashrama vibhagasya svanushitasya dharmasya samsiddhi haritoshanam. So he says all people, whatever be their varna and ashram, whether they may be brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, shudras, brahmachari, grihasthas, vanaprastha, sannyasis, whatever they may be, they can perform their occupational duties, but the purpose of all that performance should be what? Samsiddhir Haritoshanam, to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That should be the purpose. So then the next question arises, so how to please the Supreme Lord? And so therefore, in the next verse, in the 14th verse, he says, Tasmadekena manasa bhagavan satvatam pati shrotavya kirtitavyascha dhyeya pujyascha nityada. So tasmad, therefore, so if one wants to please the Supreme Lord, therefore, ekena manasa, with one pointed attention, what one must do? Bhagavan Satvatam Pati, Shrotavya, Kirtavya, Dhyeya, Puja. So one must hear, one must chant, one should glorify, remember, and worship. Whom? Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is his important quality? Satvatam Pati. He is the Pati, or the maintainer, the protector of the Satvatas. Satvatas means the devotees. So, and how often one must chant, hear, remember, worship? Once a year or once a week? Nityada. Nityada means always, always one must do these activities. That is the way one can please the Supreme Lord, by performing these activities. So having said that, then somebody may ask, so what is the benefit of performing these activities? Because everyone is looking for some benefit, right? Whatever one does, what is the important question? What's in it for me? That's the question everyone asks. The moment you tell somebody to do something, the important question is, what will I get? What will be the package? So everyone wants to know that. So Sutta Goswami knows that. So therefore in the next verse, the 15th verse, is describing what will be the benefits of hearing, chanting, and especially remembering. So he's talking about the benefits of remembrance of the Supreme Lord. Yad anudhya asina. So he says this anudhya means remembrance. This remembrance of the Supreme Lord acts like a sword. So the sword is used to cut something. So this sword of remembrance of the Supreme Lord, what does it cut? Karma Granthi. So it cuts the tight knots of karma, reactionary work in this world. Karma Granthi Nibandhanam. So Prabhupada translates Nibandhanam as interknits. So all these karma granthi, they are interknits. So very complicated mesh of knots. So we have been very expertly putting these knots. Somebody else is not putting these knots. Who's putting? Who's creating these knots? Karma granthi. We are only creating. We have become perfectly expert in that. And since when we are doing it? Since time immemorial. So how many knots there are? Huh? What? He says infinite. Unlimited knots. So if you have experience of a knot in a thread, if it's very tight and you try to untie the knots, is it easy? Very difficult, isn't it? So, the only way is to cut. That is the only way to get rid of the knots. So, these unlimited karma granthis, the only solution is to cut. Chindanti. They have to be cut. How they are cut? What is this word? Anudhya, remembrance of the Supreme Lord. That is the sword. No other material sword or a material knife will not be useful in cutting these knots. So therefore, Sudha Goswami is asking a rhetoric question. So he's saying, Kana kuryat kataratim. So those who are Kovida, understanding the benefit of remembrance of the Supreme Lord, they will remember and use this sword of remembrance to cut the karma granthi. And so he says, Kona kuryat kataratim. Who will not pay attention to these messages of the Supreme Lord, by remembering which one can cut these karma granthi? That means, if one does not do this, then he is not Kovida. Then he is not intelligent. Only a fool will not take part in this, will not try to remember the Supreme Lord. Somebody who is Kovida, intelligent, will do it. But somebody who is not Kovida, who is not intelligent, then if he is not intelligent, that means he is foolish. So a foolish person will not try to remember the Supreme Lord and cuts all these karma granthis. Srila Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, the contact of the spiritual spark with material elements creates a knot which must be cut if one wants to be liberated from the actions and reactions of fruitive work. Srila Prabhupada, as usual, is presenting a very expert and comprehensive purport, where he is presenting the problem and the solution. So what's the problem in the material world? We all have material bodies, correct? And so the moment one gets a material body, there is knot. So the knot is the knot of ahankar. The moment one gets the material body, what happens? One misidentifies with the material body. So that is called ahankar. So one is made to forget that I am spirit soul. And one begins to misidentify with the body, and one begins to think, I am this body. So why one is made to forget that I am the spirit soul? So why one is put into this forgetfulness? As soon as one comes into this material world, why one is put into this forgetfulness? Right. So if one is not put into forgetfulness, one cannot enjoy. So if one has the proper knowledge that I am not the body, the jiva, try to enjoy independent of the Supreme Lord. What?
Envious.
Envy. Okay, that's correct. So desire to enjoy independent of the Supreme Lord because of envy. Krishna bhuliya ji bhoga vancha kare. So the moment the jiva tries to enjoy, or ichha dvesha samuddhena dvandva mohena bharata. So because of ichha, because of desire to enjoy independent of the Lord, there is dvesha. Why only Krishna should be enjoyed? Why cannot I enjoy like the Supreme Lord? So the moment there is this ichha and dvesha, then one is given this material body, and the moment one is given the material body, dvandva and moha, these are the results of the material body. Dvandva means duality. So one is put into duality to think that I am male, I am female, I am black, I am white, I am Indian, I am American. So all this is dvandva because of moha, because of illusion in the bodily concept of life. And so this is what entangles one in the material worlds, and there is this misidentification with the material body. And that misidentification creates a hard knot, a tight knot, where one very strongly misidentifies that I am this body. One is convinced, I am this body. Correct? And that is what you see all around. This entire city here is a manifestation of this conviction. Otherwise, why all these things manifest around? So many wine shops and liquor shops and restaurants. So now they don't have book library, they have liquor library. Very close by, right? So much progress. That is what is their progress. So what is all this so-called progress? It's a progress in the bodily concept of life. And so therefore, it's because of the tight knots of ahankar, one begins to misidentify with the body. And so, the result of this is action, reaction, action, reaction. This goes on. The moment one performs an action, there is reaction. Then when there is reaction, one performs another action. That creates another reaction. And this chain has been going on since time immemorial. And that is what has created so many tight knots. And for all those actions, reactions, we have to get the effect. Nobody is spared. Every action has reaction. And so, all these activities create impressions, sanskaras within the mind. So Srila Prabhupada explains that every time one desires something, so there's an impression within the mind. A sanskara is created, an impression. Every time one performs an activity, every time one desires something, there's an impression created. And to fulfill that desire, material nature, under the supervision of Krishna, mercifully awards a material body. So, all these various desires, impressions, they are all piled up. Srila Prabhupada used the word stockpile. All this is piled up within the subtle body, the mind especially. Everything is piled up. So, all these impressions are there, unlimited impressions, unlimited desires since time immemorial. So, every time one takes in some input through the senses, especially through all the senses actually, but especially the eyes, every time one sees something, it's like a camera. The eye is like camera, correct? This also has a lens. It's like a camera. So just like you take photo with this mobile and then you store it, correct? How many photos you can take with this? 2000? Okay, maybe, I don't know. So after you take 2000, then if you want to take more, then what do you do? Delete, correct? Why? Space is limited. Because it is material, space is limited. But on the subtle platform, there is no limitation. So the mind is gross or subtle? Subtle. So the mind doesn't have any limitation of for how many photographs. Therefore, how many photographs are stored in the mind? Unlimited. Photographs, impressions are stored within the mind. And for each one of them, one will get a material body. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, even if there is one desire remaining, one will have to take a material body to enjoy that desire. It's a fact. That is Krishna's mercy on the jiva. Okay, you want to enjoy something? Okay, fine. Take a body, try to enjoy. So this is how one gets bound up in this material world. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada says that liberation means freedom from the cycle of reactionary work. So all this is reactionary work. So as you know, there are three types of activities. What are they? Karma, vikarma and akarma. So karma is? Yes, activities according to scriptures. Vikarma is? Against the scriptures. And akarma is? Yes, actions which don't produce any reaction. So therefore, in this material world, on the material platform, whatever actions we perform, there is going to be reaction. But only when we perform akarma, activities in connection to the Supreme Lord, then there will not be any reaction. Otherwise, this chain of action-reaction will just keep on continuing. Whatever we do. So somebody may think, okay, every action produces reaction. I won't do any action. I'll just sit in one place. I won't do anything. Will he be spared? If he doesn't do anything, why will there be reaction?
But that is not possible.
That is not possible. Why do you say it's not possible?
Because actually it is not depending on the person. It depends on the modes of materialism. They will actually impel the person to do that.
Okay, your point is correct. You have to prove it with some verse from the Bhagavad Gita.
Krishna says that living entity, he has to do something even to maintain his body.
Okay, you're right. Anyone can quote a verse? Yes. Nahi kasyat shanamapi jatu tishtatya karmakrit karyate hi avashya karma sarva prakriti jair gunai. So the modes force a person to do some activity. But okay, let's at least theoretically accept that somebody thinks, okay, I won't do anything. I'll just sit in one place. I'll go to the forest and just sit in one place and meditate. Will he face any reactions? He'll be freed from all reactions, correct?
His mind will still be active.
Mind will be active, so. But there's no work, isn't it? Mind may be active, so.
Previous reactions are still there. That will act. Maybe sitting at one place still, whatever his duty, since he's not following his duty, doing his all duties, coming and sitting just.
Mm.
It's not connection with the bhakti,
Mm.
just living this duty.
Mm.
Say, he will incur in sin for not doing.
Okay, not performing duty in person. Okay, fine. Mind will not allow the gross body to be inactive. Okay, fine. Let's assume. If he doesn't do anything. Let's assume he's inactive. Then will he face reactions or no? Huh?
The thoughts also create reactions. Whatever he's thinking.
Oh, that's a concession in Kali Yuga, you know. In Kali Yuga, what goes on in the mind doesn't have reaction unless it's turned into action. That's special quality of Kali Yuga. Special benediction for poor Kali Yuga souls.
He still has to believe and eat. His activities cannot be avoided.
So,
There must be reaction. Since he is dependent upon the nature and he is taking from super sun, so everything is required.
okay, fine. That everyone is getting.
His reaction for the prarabdha karma will be there.
No. We are talking about creating new reactions. So if he's just sitting in one place and not doing any work, will he create new reactions or no?
So, Prabhupada says that this material body is a product because what we desire, material body is like designed in that way. Like if someone wants to become a bodybuilder, so the first thing
No,
happens-
okay, that's all besides the point. If one is simply sitting inactive, will there be any reactions or no?
There will be antibiotic plates, some other living entities will have, and he has to react.
No, he is not doing anything. He's just sitting.
He will die. Forget that I won't do anything.
Actually, what Deep was correct. We are just looking for a little bit more understanding on that point.
So it is said that one is indebted to for everything. So even if we do, so we are doing some action, and then so in that way there will be reaction. Say that okay, when we sit and don't do particular action, like breathing and those things,
So even when one is breathing, what is happening?
we are dependent on
We're dependent, okay. What is happening when one breathes?
so many bacteria around.
So many organisms are being killed even when one breathes. When one breathes, one step one takes. You take one step, what is happening? So many organisms get killed. And then what to speak of eating? So every activity a person does creates reactions. Every activity, just the activity of breathing, even that creates reactions. You see how complicated the material world is? And so therefore, the very nature of the material world is such that so many reactions are being created. for whatever one does. And one has to face the consequences. So you all know how Yamraj became Vidura. You know the story? How Yamraj became Vidura?
Punish that boy was not like liable for the punishment.
You tell? He killed. Okay. Somebody would like to tell the story in brief? How Yamraj became Vidura? Any case, we'll get to the essence of the story. The essence of the story is that there was this Manduka Muni who was some thieves had entered his ashram, and then the police came, they arrested the thieves, but because the thieves were hiding in his ashram, so they thought that he's also responsible, and so they arrested him, and they were going to punish him by piercing a lancet through the rectum. And so Manduk Muni, he said, "Arey, what is this? I didn't do anything wrong, but still you're giving severe punishment." So anyway, the king released him, but then he contacted Yamraj. And he asked Yamraj, why such severe punishment for this for apparently doing nothing? He didn't do the stealing, only the thieves were hiding. So then Yamraj saw the records, and he saw that in his childhood, he had pierced an ant with some grass or something. Sometimes children play. Maybe we also have done it. So he pierced the rectum with straw or a piece of grass, and he said, for that, this is the reaction. So Mandakamani said, Arey, what is this? That as a child I did something without any knowledge, and you're giving such severe punishment, useless. So he cursed Yamaraj to become Vidura. But the point that Srila Prabhupada makes very often after relating the story is that how the laws of material nature are so stringent. Even that small activity of piercing an ant, one has to face reaction. One can't escape. And just think about all the nonsense people are doing all around. And they think we are free. Just see the ignorance. They have no idea of what consequences they'll have to face. So the point is, so many reactions are created in this way. Therefore, the only way one can be saved from all these reactions is by coming to the path of yoga. That is the only way. By oneself, one cannot be free from all these reactions. So therefore, in the next paragraph, then Srila Prabhupada is coming to the solution. How to be liberated from this material bondage, this chain of actions and reactions. So one has to practice some form of yoga. What is yoga? What is yoga? Exercises. Anyway, just a side point. Sometimes even devotees use this as a misnomer. They do some exercises and they say, we are doing yoga. There is Ashtanga yoga, correct? What yoga they do, God knows. Out of the Ashtanga, how many angas they follow, that's another question. Anyway, at least the last two cannot be practiced in Bangalore. So anyway, so when most people talk about yoga, what they refer to? Some asanas, exercises, that's all. But what's the generic meaning of yoga? Connection with Supreme. That is the generic meaning. And so therefore, then you may have studied about the yoga ladder. I think some of you are doing Bhakti Shastri, correct? So then there is, first of all, there is what? Karma yoga. So there's Karma Yoga. Now Prabhupada explains it in a very interesting way over here. How he defines Karma Yoga? Karma overcoated with devotional service is called Karma Yoga. So karma overcoated with devotional service, that means there is karma plus some connection with the Supreme. That's what Prabhupada is referring to. So when karma is performed for the pleasure of the Supreme, then that becomes Karma Yoga. And then, so one performs Karma Yoga, that is performing one's prescribed duties with detachment from the result. And then one gets purified by that Karma Yoga. And then as one gets purified, one becomes more and more detached from the fruitive mentality. And then as one progresses, then one comes to the platform of Jnana Yoga. So Jnana Yoga is trying to understand the Supreme by empirical, philosophical speculation. Right? By mental speculation, one is trying to understand the Supreme. So that is the path of Jnana Yoga. And in that way, one can progress. But then Srila Prabhupada says that so only karma or jnana cannot help one gain liberation. There has to be that connection to the Supreme. That connection to the Supreme is very important. Without some element of bhakti, karma and jnana by themselves cannot give liberation. So there has to be some connection with bhakti. So therefore Prabhupada is saying overcoated with bhakti. So these are technically called as Bhakti Mishra Karma and Bhakti Mishra Gyan. So when one performs these types of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, then yes, then one can get liberation with that mixture of bhakti. Then that will ultimately lead to liberation, getting out of this bondage of karma, karma, vikarma. And then when one totally gives up the tendency to enjoy the results of one's activities, the Karma Yoga ultimately leads to Jnana Yoga. And then one is totally free from all fruitive mentality. What is the cause of bondage? The cause of bondage is what? The enjoying mentality, the attachment to the fruits. The attachment to the fruits is a cause of bondage, of the enjoying mentality. As soon as we perform an activity, but we want to enjoy the fruits, that leads to bondage. So therefore, Krishna says, Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale spriha. So Krishna says, as far as I am concerned, I have no bondage. Why? Name karma phale spriha. Because I don't desire the fruits of the activities. So as soon as one desires the fruits of the activities and one tends to enjoy, that becomes the cause of bondage. So that is Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. On the platform of Jnana Yoga, there are no more desires to enjoy the fruits of one's activities. And that's how one comes to the point of liberation. Okay, the Brahmabhuta stage. But then Prabhupada says, but Bhakti Yoga, what is that? But pure Bhakti Yoga is independent of such karma and jnana because it alone can not only endow one with liberation from conditional life, but also award one the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So then there is the path of Bhakti Yoga. So now on the path of Bhakti Yoga, so Bhakti Yoga will result in not only just liberation, but awarding pure devotion. Okay, so now let's come to the understanding of what is liberation. What is meant by liberation? In some lectures, liberation does not mean getting 4 hands and 4 legs. So what is your understanding of liberation? Wait, let's. What's your understanding of liberation? Free from material bondage. Okay. A little more precise. That's correct. But a little more precise. Getting free from Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Okay, that's also correct. Eternally serving in the kingdom of God. Okay. So that's the ultimate definition of liberation. So, of course, liberation can have different meanings based upon the person who's aspiring for liberation. Depending on the path that he's following, there can be different understandings of liberation. So, those who are Buddhists, they're also trying to achieve liberation, nirvana. So, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita also says, this is last verse of the second chapter. There also, Krishna also talks about nirvana. But then what is nirvana has different definitions according to what the person is practicing. So the Buddhists also want to achieve nirvana, but their idea of nirvana is void, voidism, everything finished. And there are the Mayavadis and the impersonalists, they are all trying to achieve nirvana. What is their idea of nirvana? Mukti? Yes, merging into the impersonal Brahman. And what is the Vaishnava understanding of liberation? Muktir hitva anyata rupam swarupena vyavastiti. That is the devotional understanding of what is liberation. Mukti hitva, hitva means giving up. Anyatha rupam. Anyatha rupam means all other designations. All other designations. So one gives up all other designations, material designations, and swarupena vyavastiti, to be situated in one's constitutional position. What is the constitutional position? Krishnera Nityadas, being situated in that constitutional position is actual liberation. So, by the practice of devotional service, one actually is liberated to come to one's constitutional position. And so, when one comes to that constitutional position, one develops loving service towards the Supreme Lord, and one achieves prema for the Supreme Lord. That's the ultimate goal. And liberation from the material world is simply a byproduct. So getting out of the material world is a byproduct of the practice of devotional service. It is not the goal of devotional service. Unlike the other paths, they think that the goal is liberation. But devotees don't think that the goal of their practices is liberation. Because the goal of devotional service is what? What? Yes, loving service to the Supreme Lord or developing love for the Supreme Lord. That's the actual goal. Otherwise, Mukti, Mukulatanjali, Sevate, Asman, Bilumangal Thakur says, Mukti personified is standing with folded hands in front of the devotee's door and saying, how can I serve you? So mukti is insignificant. Getting out of the material world is simply a byproduct of the practice of devotional service. That's not the goal of the practice of devotional service. But whatever it is, coming to that platform of understanding that I am simply a servant of the Supreme Lord, to be situated in one's constitutional position, actual liberation, which will of course result in cutting off all the karma granthi, because as soon as one performs an activity for the Supreme Lord, there is no reaction. Srila Prabhupada explains with a simple example. He says, just like in this world also, suppose there's an employee working for the company. I'm sure many of you are working for companies, right? So I don't know how it works these days, but at least Srila Prabhupada gives the example. So he says that if an employee is working for a company and sometimes the company may make a profit, if the company makes a lot of profit 1 year, so is the salary of the employees increased? I don't know, maybe. Or if we take the other example, if there's a loss, if the company undergoes a loss, is the salary of the employees reduced? So that's what, sometimes difficult to apply these examples in the present day context. Things are funny these days. But ideally speaking, the employee should not face the consequences of the profits and loss which the company owners get. So similarly, why? Because they are working for that company. So similarly, if one works for the Supreme Lord, then whatever reactions of that work that may come are taken by the Supreme Lord. And the person who's working, he does not get any reaction. Just like Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is fighting, but no reaction. What is the example in the case of fighting? What is the example Prabhupada gives? Yes. Person who's fighting in war for the country, so he's killing so many people, but he's given a gold medal. But the same person comes home and he kills even one person, is put in the jail. Why? He's fighting for the country, and therefore the country takes responsibility. So, similarly, when we perform our activities for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, in accordance to the instructions of the Supreme Lord, coming in parampara, then one does not face reaction. Therefore, in the definition of pure devotional service, as given by Rupa Goswami, what's the definition? Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyana anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktirutta. So there is anushilanam. In that there is a prefix anu. What does it mean? Following. Following whom? One's mind. Following the footsteps of the previous acharyas, following the instructions of the spiritual master. So when one follows, then no reaction. But one has to perfectly follow. That is what saves one from reactions. So we come to the path of devotional service. If we speculate and do things on our own, then there will be reaction. But if we do things in accordance to Krishna's instructions for the pleasure of Krishna, then no reaction. That is pure bhakti yoga. Okay. So, on the platform of pure bhakti yoga, anukulyena means favorable. Favorable means? Yes. With a favorable desire to please the Supreme Lords. So, that is what is anudhya. That is the remembrance. So, therefore, while performing devotional activities, one should be alert to perform the activities remembering the Supreme Lord. That I am performing this activity for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, 8th chapter, 7th verse, what Krishna says? 8th chapter, 7th verse. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara vidyacha. So Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna to only fight. He says, remembering me, you fight. And that remembrance is what is most important. That is what is being told here. Because that remembrance of the Supreme Lord, that I'm performing this activity for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, that remembrance acts like swords, which cuts off all the karma granthi. Therefore, that remembrance needs to be there. And we find before that, what is 8.5, 8.6? 8.5 is? Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevram. And similarly, 8.6? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. So you see, in all these verses, what Krishna is referring to? Smaran, remembering. So that remembrance of the Supreme Lord is what is very important. So, an activity can be performed with remembrance. See, as soon as you think that, okay, I'm performing this activity for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, you're remembering. Correct? Suppose one is cooking for the Lord. So one way is you just cook. without any remembrance that I'm doing this for the pleasure of the Lord. Okay, let's take a simple example. So, just like if it's your friend's birthday and you're cooking his favorite item, how will you cook? How will you cook? To please him. So, how will you cook? Very carefully. Very carefully, so that it is made in the perfect way, so that he will be pleased. Correct? So, when you remember that I am cooking this item for pleasing my friends, then you'll prepare it nicely. But if you're cooking because somebody told me to do it, so if you're cooking with that consciousness, theek hai, something I have to cook, then how will you cook? Neglectfully. Somehow finish it. That will be the consciousness. But when one is remembering, I am doing this service for pleasing my friends. And who's our best friend? What is your proof? You say Krishna is your best friend. You have some proof? Huh? So you said, no? Krishna is your best friend. So what's your proof? Anybody else? So Krishna himself says that he is, whether we know it or not, he says he is our best friend. So, friend in this world, we try to please very nicely. Then what about our best friend? How we must perform services for his pleasure? Best friend. Why is he a best friend? Somebody may say, oh, Krishna is claiming himself to be the best friend. Anyone can claim anything in this world. So what is the proof that he is actually our best friend? Comes life after life. And does what? Huh? What? Facilitates desires. Okay, fine. That's okay. So then with those desires we are committing all sinful activities. So what's the big deal there? Huh? Yes, he gives intelligence, he gives remembrance. He tries to bring us back towards him. So many things Krishna is doing. So therefore, understanding this fact, then any service that we do, we have to understand that I'm doing this service for the pleasure, satisfaction of my best friend Krishna. And that remembrance of Krishna will act like swords. And to the degree one remembers, to that degree one will get the sword-like effect. So either one can do mechanically, somehow finish it, or one can do it with remembrance of Krishna. And therefore, when there is remembrance of Krishna, then there is quality. Correct? That's what the example you said. If you remember, we are cooking for our best friend, then one cooks with quality. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have the example of Raghav Pandit. You have heard of Raghav Pandit? So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorifies Raghav Pandit as if he has 5 mouths. Why? Even though he had so many coconut trees within his garden, he would go great distance to bring the best coconuts, offering the best. And when Raghav Pandit and his sister Damayanti, every year they would make hundreds of preparations for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so as they were cooking, they would be so absorbed. Their consciousness would be soaked, absorbed in what? What will please Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That was the total absorption. And therefore, those hundreds of preparations, when they would reach Jagannath Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would tell his personal servant Govinda to keep all the preparations in a separate room. So sometimes devotees also, if they get their favorite item, they store it in the locker, right? He is agreeing. So similarly, all these tendencies ultimately come from Supreme Lord only. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also tells, so their locker is not sufficient. So one entire room. So he would keep them for 1 year. Mahaprabhu would taste those items made by Raghav Pandit. Why? Because prepared with love for the pleasure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So first class preparations. So similarly, any service that we do, ultimately every service that we do, whether it is cleaning this temple hall, worshipping the deity, cooking, any service that we do is for pleasing Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So therefore, if we are in that consciousness, that remembrance, then that remembrance, if we cultivate that remembrance, it's a matter of cultivation. So in 8.8, so there Srila Prabhupada writes that how the mind is very fickle, and therefore the mind must be forced, the mind must be trained to remember Krishna. It's not an easy job, correct? We all have experience as we are chanting the holy name during japa. So there we are directly trying to remember the Supreme Lord by the chanting of the holy names. So if we don't pay attention to the holy name, then that means we are not trying to remember Krishna. We are remembering so many other things. Mind is very restless. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavad dhridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayor evasa dushkaram. More difficult to control the mind than even the raging winds. And what is the solution Krishna gives in the next verse? Abhyas. Abhyas means practice. So it's a matter of practice. So as one is chanting the holy names, one has to practice hearing the holy name, practice remembering Krishna. Similarly, as one is hearing Krishna Katha, here it says, Ko na kuryat katha ratim. So as we're hearing the Katha, this is not different from Krishna. Krishna Katha is not different from Krishna. It's same, everything is absolute. So then, where is the mind? Sometimes physically present, mentally absent. And you are where your mind is. So therefore, it requires some practice to try to focus, And therefore, the more we try to practice, again, Prabhupada writes in 8.5 purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that therefore, throughout one's life, one must practice. Not that at the time of death, directly one can remember Krishna. No, throughout one's life, one has to practice remembering Krishna. It's a matter of practice. When Krishna is pleased with that practice, then Krishna will give his own remembrance at the time of death, even though the mind may be highly agitated at the time of death. It's not within our power to remember Krishna at the time of death. The physical and mental conditions will be so deranged, very difficult. So Prabhupada writes, Krishna gives his own remembrance at the time of death. And then we will attain perfection. But for that, we need to attract Krishna's mercy by practicing to remember Krishna by all our devotional activities. So when the activity is performed with the consciousness that I'm doing this for the pleasure of Krishna, automatically there will be quality in the service. There will be attention to details of the service. There will be sincerity in one's practice because one wants to please Krishna. And that remembrance of Krishna acts like sword to cut off all these karma granthis that we have accumulated since time immemorial. And therefore, Narad Muni has elaborately discussed the subject matter in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam in his teachings to King Prachin Barishad. Those of you interested can read the 29th chapter of the 4th canto, where elaborate discussion is there by Srila Narad Muni on the power of the subtle body, the mind. But that's what is very vital. So devotional service is not simply a matter of some mechanical activities. Prabhupada named the society as International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It's about the consciousness. He didn't say Krishna work. Krishna consciousness. Work, everyone is doing some work. But then what is the consciousness behind the work that makes the whole difference? Otherwise, we are also cooking, outside people are also cooking, we are making garlands, they are making garlands, we are making buildings, they are making buildings, everyone is doing the same thing apparently. What makes the difference? The consciousness behind that activity. And one needs to be conscious. Otherwise, one doesn't get the benefit. That is what is being told here. I'll end with this pastime, which maybe some of you have heard. In Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada was giving a class on one of the verses of Queen Kunti's prayers. And as soon as Srila Prabhupada began the class, one devotee stood up to leave. And Srila Prabhupada immediately asked, where is he going? And one devotee said, he has some work to do. And Prabhupada said, what work? It will simply be Ugra Karma. Ugra Karma means materialistic work. So all this, they build all this metro and all this, so much of hard labor. All this Ugra Karma. So basically Ugra Karma is materialistic work. So Srila Prabhupada says, without this hearing and chanting, what service can he do? It will simply be material work. And the result of that will be, Prabhupada says, after some time, you will ask why my old spiritual master has given this huge burden of the deity. The Archa Vigraha will become Galagraha, huge stone tied around the neck. It becomes simply a burden. So devotional activities will simply become a burden when they're done in materialistic consciousness. That's the nature of material work. One doesn't like to do it for too long. One is waiting for the vacation. Correct? When will this work get over? There's no taste. So that same consciousness will come when we have a materialistic consciousness. The same result will be there. One will simply want to give up, somehow finish it, somehow finish this chanting, these 16 rounds, get it done. So that will be the effects. And therefore, on one hand, we have to regularly hear, read Srila Prabhupada's books, at the same time chant the holy names attentively to purify our consciousness. And then whatever practical services we do for the mission of Srila Prabhupada, we'll be able to do in the right consciousness. When we do those activities in the right consciousness for the purpose of pleasing Guru and Krishna, then that attracts grace. And by that grace, one will be able to hear and chant better. Then there will be Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. So all this will take place, especially the Smaranam that will take place. And then that Smaranam will eradicate, will cut all the karma granthis, and then one can ultimately get pure love of God and at the same time be liberated from material bondage. Therefore, Sutta Goswami is saying, Kona kuriyat katarat. Who is that foolish person who will not take up to devotional service and hear and chant about the Supreme Lord and remember about the Supreme Lord? Only a foolish person. Hare Krishna. Any questions?
Regarding in Kali Yuga, the things which we think in the mind but not actually performed. Until activity has been performed, it will not have the effect. So what about the offenses?
Which offense?
Maybe Vaishnava offense. Maybe we're thinking to something consciously or unconsciously to a devotee. Will it have its effect, or else any activity that maybe?
No, the principle is the same. So if you think of committing an offense in the mind, it will not have effects. But you keep on thinking, what will happen?
Come into action.
It is but natural. Don't think it will remain only in the mind. So therefore, though that concession is there, we cannot take undue advantage of the concession. So if we are not careful, dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate. If we keep on doing dhyan about something, anything that we meditate on. So if we meditate on an offense, then we will become attached to it. And if we become attached to it, what we'll perform it. The same principle applies. So similarly, you meditate on Krishna, you become attached. Materialistic boys and girls, then that is their object of dhyan. So whatever is the object of dhyan, meditation, one becomes attached. It all begins in the mind. That is the power of the subtle body. The subtle body is what leads to the next gross body, correct? So therefore, it is the subtle body which actually needs to be trained. The entire training is for the subtle body. The gross just follows. Okay?
Another thing, what are past vasanas and samskaras, which, as you were telling, which are very deep rooted. So, in the devotional service, when you took upon, are there any specific devotional activities that we had to perform so that we can at least try to get over the.
So you're looking for shortcuts.
Not exactly, but it may help in our right of service to Krishna.
So see, basically, the process remains the same. Navida Bhakti. That is the process. And more specifically, we have to perform those activities which have been recommended by Srila Prabhupada, by spiritual authorities, but perform those activities. But the important point is, as we were discussing, the more one performs them sincerely and seriously for the pleasure of Krishna, it will have effects. What activity that is, that's immaterial. It may be this type of service or that type of service, whatever service one is given. Some things are common for everyone, correct? Chanting the holy names, attending Bhagavatam class, common. But whatever activity it may be, small service, big service, whatever it is, any devotional activity, if we are performing that activity consciously with the desire to please, then that's what will purify us. Do something mechanically won't help much. Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So
Aye.
you have mentioned about karma yoga, acting in Krishna consciousness. So what is niskam karma and swakam karma?
Well, that's a topic of the Bhagavad Gita. You join some Bhakti Shastri course and find out. We don't want to get into those technical details. Anything else?
So you told about the remembrance of the Lord while doing the activities. So just in a practical sense, like most of the time if we get any service from the authority, we think that how nicely we can do it, but sometimes this part is missing, that actually we are thinking that we are going to please the Lord. We make plan very nicely, but this concept is missing, that the Lord is going to be pleased from us. We just make the plan that we want to do it very nicely. So is that going to help, or like we have to practically think about it, that we are actually going to please the Lord?
So, okay, so you make a nice plan. That's good. That's good. Making the nice plan to do the nice service, that's good. But for what? What's the motivation behind it?
The authorities told us.
Okay, so is it just because they have told us, or there's something more than that?
We want to please us.
That's good. That's good. So, who are those authorities?
Yeah, that you
So that's good. So if you're doing the activity with that consciousness that I want to please these devotees, Yasya Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada. So that's fine. But then there could be so many between the white and the black, there could be many gray zones. So one white and black. So the white is pure consciousness that I am performing this activity only and only for the pleasure of the Supreme. And the other extreme is I am performing this activity for my pleasure, my sense gratification. That's the other extreme. And then in between there could be various shades. So one can be performing a service, okay, to please the devotees, but some recognition must be there. So that's the contamination of karma, a fruitive mentality when the practice of devotional service. So in the initial stages there could be coatings, as Prabhupada said, coatings when the practice of devotional service. Therefore, the definition of pure devotional service is jnana karmadi anavritam, uncovered. Coating must not be there. That is pure bhakti. No coating. So we have to be careful. But then, yes, if we are in the consciousness of simply trying to please Guru and Krishna, then that's perfect.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anything else? Good. Thank you very much. Grandraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you very much.
Really amazing lecture.